Greetings, Hotep, which means peace in the ancient African language of Kemet. My name is Yasira Hotep, and I have been fortunate for the last 2 weeks to have some guests coming to Chicago to visit me. And today I have Miss Joe Pearson, and Joe Pearson is, I guess I would call her a psychic for people who may not know all the terminology, but above and beyond being having psychic abilities, which we all have, but which she is gifted with, I would call her a spiritual reader, spiritual advisor, and so on and so forth. And so we're going to get into a conversation about the power of the unseen universe. Because when we talk about psychic powers and psychic abilities, we are talking about aspects of reality that lie beneath the surface that we need to be able to explore. But before I go further, I want to say hello to Joe.
Hello.
How are you,
Hello,
Joe?
everyone.
Yes. And she's kind of shy. So I'm going to, not shy, I'm going to say humble. And that's one of the things that I like about her because she's very humble and she's very, just not assuming, but you would not really know the power that she has within her and the things that she is able to help you with. And so, because this is a recorded show, nobody can call in and ask like questions and stuff, but I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to just talk about the unseen universe. Before we get started, I want to talk about Kemetic yoga skills. I want to talk about some of the things that we have to offer. We're here at our YogaSkills studio in Bronzeville in Chicago. We actually rent out this studio for different events. We have about 2,000 square feet. And we have yoga classes, of course. We have martial arts class in the martial art called Capoeira on Mondays with Kamal Rashid. We have Kemetic dance, ancient Kemetic dance with Mama Khalida Cali on Wednesday evenings at 6 o'clock. And then we have Kemetic yoga classes here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Wednesdays. Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We just got finished with class today. The other thing is we also do teacher training courses. So we have a teacher training course starting here at the studio at the end of October. We have upcoming workshops in Baltimore, in Dallas, and in what's that other city? Boston. I've never been to Boston before, but we have an upcoming event in Boston in November. We also going to be leaving to go to Kemet again on one of our annual tours that we do. We do 2 trips to Kemet. This trip that we do in November is going to be a teacher training as well as a tour of the continent, or not a continent, but a tour of the country of the ancient sites, of which Joe has attended with me before, and she's a certified Kemetic yoga teacher. We also have our annual, biannual, because we do it twice a year, our biannual trip to Ghana, which is going to be going on in December. And then in January, I implore whoever is interested to get signed up and registered to go to Jamaica for our Healing Sun Kemetic Yoga Retreat and Teacher Training in Jamaica. And so that's going to be January 18th to the 27th. And so you should go to KemeticYogaSkills.com to register and to, get more information. So we're going to start our discussion by talking about the unseen world. And in reference to that, one more thing that I was thinking about is I have a really good friend, one of my brothers and comrades from the past, who passed away, whose name is Babu Atiba. And as I put on this hat, this African Yoruba hat that I'm wearing, this crown, this I don't know the exact name of it, but I know it's a hat that they wear in Nigeria and maybe other parts of Africa that maybe an elder would wear. And it's a hat that my friend Babu Atiba would wear. So when I put it on, I looked at myself, I said, I think I look like Babu Atiba. And he was a master drummer. So, and so he has entered that realm of the ancestors. He has entered that unseen world where spirits reside, where the ancestors reside, where there is phenomenon taking place that is unseen with the naked eye, but can be perceived maybe with that so-called third eye. So before we go forward, Joe Pearson, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like what title do you hold for yourself? Do you give yourself?
It's really interesting because I haven't given myself a title, because I found that in doing so, when people hear that, they have an idea or they start formulating ideas, and I've sensed that I function a little beyond a particular title.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. So, how would you describe the work that you do? I mean, I don't know. I want to. I know this is sort of impromptu, so I want to maybe tell the audience a little bit about how I met you, and so that might lead to further discussion.
Oh, it was a powerful way of meeting you, Sarah. I was working in Sedona and doing the spiritual work in Sedona.
And for those who may not know, Sedona is in Arizona, and it's a place where there's a lot of powerful spiritual and metaphysical energy taking place.
Yes. And Sarah came to me for a reading. And in that, it was connecting with him and sensing him and just seeing an expanse within him, not knowing that he was a master instructor of Kemetic yoga. It's who he is and what he does was such a part. It is who he is. And I'll put it like that. So reading him was an honor and a delight to connect with him in that way and to see the depth, width, and breadth of who he is as a person, as a man, and with everything that he does.
Well, thank you. So what was happening during that time, I learned about this place called Sedona, Arizona, which is of course, it's in the southwestern part of the United States, a very powerful area of the country. There's a lot of desert. So I guess you could say Sedona is in the desert. There are mountains there, there are hills there, there are plateaus and mesas there. And there's a lot of opportunities for you to go hiking. So when I was there, I was going hiking, and I was going on my own little individual spiritual quest that I would do at that time. I would go alone out into the what I call the wilderness, but way out deep into the bush, because I like to spend a lot of time in Africa. Because I like to use the term the bush, way out in the country, And I was out there hiking. I found a place where I wanted to meditate at. And when doing my meditation I'm just describing the day that I met Joe. Doing my meditation, I was instructed, okay, because we're talking about the unseen world. I don't really talk about these things a lot, but I was instructed to put some red, the dirt in the area was red, and I was instructed to put it on my skin. And so I proceeded to put it on my arms, and then I was instructed that I should take off my clothes and cover my body with it, right? And I was out in I was out in the place where I was alone. So I said, okay, I'm gonna follow these instructions. And I had a kind of cathartic experience where I had to release a lot of things, built up energy. I had to be, I had to sort of, I was moved to ask for forgiveness for things that I've done that I maybe should not have done, to ask for blessings for people I care about, and so on and so forth, But during the time I was there, I kept feeling like there was a bear behind me. And I kept turning around to find this bear, but there was no bear there. There's no bears even live in that area. But what I discovered was that I have a spirit animal, which is the bear, because bears are kind of big. I'm kind of big. Bears are kind of grumpy. I'm kind of grumpy. Bears are kind of, lumbering. And I sort of lumber a little bit, So, and one of my Tai Chi teachers had told me that I kind of have this energy like a bear. So at any rate, when I got finished with my hike and my meditation, I went back to my car, and I got on the road, and my car was sort of, I felt like my car was taken control of, and I pulled to the right into this driveway. And the driveway, and when I got to the end of the driveway, there was a building, and it said Metaphysical Center, something like that. What was the name of that place?
Center for the New Age.
Center for the New Age. But it was like a metaphysical place where they had a lot of spiritual things, incense, all kind of different things like that. And crystals, things that you would expect to find in that area. And then they had a wall that had the faces. They had like headshots of all these different people that were psychic readers. And so I saw this sister here, and she was the only Black person that was on the wall. And so I said, I'm going to get a reading by this sister, because I couldn't figure out how did my car actually could pull into this drive, because I didn't know this place existed. And my car sort of on its own pulled into the driveway. And and so they called, I said, I want to make an appointment with this sister. So she came about half an hour later. And when she came and met me, she was sort of routine. She was going to take me to the little room where they do readings at. And then what happened?
It was an immediate connection. You said when I look in his eyes, it is like you're seeing the expanse of the universe. All that, and this is so true. It's as if he is open and receiving and giving, and it's an energy that pulls you inward. So reading him was very easy, very fluid. Within, I heard water and connected him with water. And I was guided to have us sit near the creek. And that's the only reading that I had done near the creek, and did not do one thereafter. It was the energy when you're connecting with someone with the level of your share. It's like a dance of energies. And the vibration is such that it speaks to you. And what is heard is actually what is occurring within the dynamic of the person. And that's how it was with Yasir. I saw him in all this movement, and I didn't realize in relaying the information until afterwards. And he expressed to me that he's Kemetic yoga instructor. It was so who he is. The whole vibration, his energy just felt like it was just flowing in movement. And then coupled with the water, it was like it was dancing with the energy coming from the creek.
Okay, so let me just add a little bit context, right? So the creek, so basically Sedona is a very beautiful place, but it's kind of dry, it's out in the desert, but there's a river, a stream, I would call it, that come down from the mountains, and it streams down into the back of this metaphysical center, this New Age center, and it forms a creek. It forms like a pond or a creek or a body of water. And there's a garden there, right? There's plants growing there and things like that, right? Because it's like a little green area. And so, when I met up with Jo for the first time, she was gonna take me to the room where they usually do the readings, and she said, "Do you like the water?" And so I said, "Yeah, I like water." So she said that she was being guided to take me to the back of the building where they have this stream of water that comes down. And she said she's never done a reading back there. And so I said, so she asked me that, like, what? I said, yeah, I come from Chicago and I live close to Lake Michigan. And so I go to the lake all the time. Maybe since I was a child, I've gone to the lake and I sat there and I have meditated, interacted with the waters, the energy of the waters of the lake, basically my entire life. So she said she was guided to take me back there. And she told me that she's going to do the reading, but that I need to take notes. Because wherever she goes into the subconscious, into the unseen aspect of reality, she's not going to remember on a conscious level what she told me, right?
Mm-hmm. For the most part, it just flows. It comes through.
So this to give some context. So you're been doing this work because you do this work for other people, right? And you do this as a profession.
Yes, I have been, and it's morphing into a whole different way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. So people come to you and they and you perform readings for them to give them spiritual advice, to give them information about themselves and so on and so forth.
Right.
Okay. And what type of issues do people come to you to have solved?
It's really interesting because it's, as I said, it's morphed into a whole new way of being. So it is more so connecting with that person, and there's dialogue now.
Mm-hmm.
And within that dialogue, the information comes through to be able to assist them with where they are, what they're moving toward within themselves, the gifts that they have. It picks up past shadow self, those parts that are challenging and need to be worked through or can be worked through. So it's more of an exchange. And all the information coming through is geared toward that person's growth and development, especially spiritually, and how that translates into their physical material world. It picks up the mental aspect, consciousness, their energy, what they're translating, what they're presenting to the world, how the world sees them. It gives a broad spectrum of information comes through with the person, but it's specific to the person that I'm sitting with.
So, how did you discover that you had this gift? And like, about how old were you? And was there any circumstances surrounding?
It's really interesting how I came into realizing it was the gift. It's always been there all my life, but it was nothing that I looked at and said, this is a gift, this is something in particular, this is something I can use. It just happened. It would happen. So in a way, I wasn't even aware that it was something in addition to who I am. It was just who I am. And it was just what I did and what I do. But once I moved to Sedona and started working at the Center for the New Age, not as a psychic, not as a practitioner at all. I was working in the store. And the owner of the store, one day, a young lady came in to get a reading, and we had a book with all the readers. I gave her the book. She looked through the book and said, I'm not connecting with anyone. I don't see anyone in the book that I feel can do this reading for me. The owner of the center came in behind the counter, and she asked me what was going on. I told her she hasn't decided on anyone. She said there's no one in the book that she feels can do the reading for her. So the owner started describing this reader and saying, oh, I know the perfect person for you. They're really gifted. They can pick up your spirits. They can pick up. She's going through this long description, and I'm standing there saying, who is she talking about? And she reached over and picked up a key and said, go to the empty office and do the reading for this young lady. Just out of the clear blue like that. And I literally froze because I hadn't thought in terms of doing that type of work. I was there to assist the readers and manage the store. We went up to the room, and I remember we didn't even sit down. As soon as we got in the room and I looked at her, the information just started coming and I started talking. To this day, I don't remember what we said. It just channeled through. And when it was finished, I said, that's all that I'm getting. The young lady started crying and she said, this is exactly what I needed. And she went through this thing to confirm what was given. And we went back downstairs, and the owner of the center said, keep the key, that's your office, get to work.
Okay, so somebody else was recognizing something in you that you maybe not recognize within yourself.
No, I didn't. I had no point of reference for it. And the thing is that it doesn't make me different or more than, because I believe, and based on what I have felt and sensed with people, that is just a part of who we are. We all have that gift. It's just that for some people, they recognize it, they're aware of it, they develop it, and for others, we're not consciously aware that we're reading energy all the time.
Mm.
And you walk into a room and you get a funny feeling, or you get a certain feeling around someone. That is that gift working. You're reading that energy. And from my perspective in school of thought, we live in a vibrational universe. Energy. Everything is energy at a space level. So it stands to reason from my school of thought that we're all connected. It's all connected.
So when you say it's all connected, so you're saying like there's really no separation between what we can see and what we cannot see. It's only our perception of something being unseen or something being invisible or something not really being there and something actually being there. Because I can take up this cup and I know that this cup is here because I can feel a sort of a tangible existence of this cup. But to sense something that's in the non-physical world, I need to use a different set of senses rather than like my touch and my sight and my hearing and so on and so forth.
It's what I'm hearing is levels of vibration. So what we see, the human body carries a certain vibrations. And I really got this. And when I had I call it a death experience, which confirmed for me that it's all energy, expressing as consciousness, different levels of vibration, different levels of vibration. So it's, from my understanding, and science says that if you were to look at the hand, for instance, with a high-powered microscope,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't look solid.
Mm-hmm.
So what it told me, based on that experience that I had, that it's different levels of vibration that hold form. And from that to everything being just a sea of energy, which is how the unseen world translates.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm telling you. So an analogy may be like the ocean, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you have this medium that we call water. But within that water, you have all of these different creatures of the sea. You have various structures like coral reefs, and you have variations in different depths, different structures of the geography of the ocean, where you might have a shallow going all the way down thousands of feet, and you actually have mountains and hills and stuff within the ocean, as well as the creatures that live in the ocean. But they're all interacting because when you're in the water carries vibration. So when something is moving, an animal that's very sensitive can feel that motion that was sent like a wave, or like when you throw a pebble into the water and you see the ripples and so on and so forth, right? This happens on the surface, but it also happens under the surface. So we are, we are actually picking up energy from each other in terms of that. When you say vibration, like if you throw something in the water or something moves in the water, it creates a ripple effect. And that's the vibration that you're saying that we are experiencing, but we are experiencing on an energetic level.
Yes.
Okay. So let me say this too. So for example, and I think I've talked about this before. If you think about energy, so let's say an X-ray, right? You go get an X-ray. You go to the dentist. The dentist say, I have to give you an X-ray. They take a lead apron, put it on your neck, from your neck down over your chest, and then they go out of the room. They put the X-ray machine over you, over the area they're gonna take a picture of, and they go out of the room and they click a switch. But now you don't see anything, you don't smell anything. All you hear is the sound of the click, the click of the thing, but you don't actually hear the rays of the X-ray. But something very powerful happened that was so powerful that the person had to leave out of the room, right? So what you're telling me is that I'm not saying you can perceive an X-ray, but you can actually feel this invisible thing that's occurring that is below the perceptible level of humans, of the primary perceptive organs and sensory receptors within human, which is going to be your touch, your smell, your sight, your hearing, and so on and so forth, right? So, so we all can access that world, but some of us are just more sensitive to it, more
Exactly.
open to it, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And another example I can think of is that like you look at this little case here, and it is this small. So this case may represent the amount of the world, the amount of reality, the amount of the universe that we are able to perceive with our senses. But then if you take this little case, it's only like, let's say it's 2 inches, and you compare it to the rest, you say, okay, this 2 inches is what we know, what we can perceive. But what we cannot see and perceive is about 3,000 miles. Instead of 2 inches, it's 3,000 miles, let's say from the East Coast to the West Coast. And so we are missing so much stuff because we're only using a tiny part of our perceptive powers or our perceptive abilities. Okay.
Yes. Both excellent examples.
Mm-hmm. So, what type of things do people come to you to ask you about it, give them assistance with?
It's a litany of things. It's what we generally deal with is whatever that person is dealing with at that time. So it could be anything from relationships to career to their spiritual growth to their spiritual direction. And that's what I get more than anything. People are waking up and they're starting to question and see themselves as more than what they can touch and feel and their interaction in their everyday life, in their daily life. So now, and in this day and time, it's a lot. There are a lot of people that are looking for direction, and really starting to sense their potential, what they're experiencing, starting to experience from a spiritual perspective, and looking for some direction and guidance and some answers. And the most beautiful thing about it is that when we connect, it ends up being for them more so confirmation, taking them deeper. It allows them to open up and go into deeper levels of themselves. When you're reading their energy like that, it goes into deeper levels of themselves, and a lot of it ends up being confirmation and giving them what they need to move forward. And the most and highest thing is embracing themselves. Then there is also information that takes this and brings it into an even focal point to how that marries my everyday life. It's a part of who we are, and it, in a lot of ways, when we aren't acknowledging it, it makes life a little out of balance, and then people are wondering, well, what's wrong? Something just doesn't feel right. I get a lot of the people that say something doesn't feel right, something's not making sense. And working with them from the physical material into the spiritual, and those who are more sensitive and embrace that side a little more, or at least becoming aware of it, we work from the spiritual and then work cross emotion, mental, and then physical material life.
So, oftentimes, like, because I know this from my own personal experience, oftentimes people are in distress over loss, because you might lose a loved one. I know, like for myself, I've lost two of my three sons, two of my four children, so I know that's very distressing to me, and something that bothers me. I think about it every day, and but so when people go through loss, some of the things that they want to know about is how is is my loved one? Are they in pain? Are they in distress? Are they doing okay in the afterlife? Is there really an afterlife? That might even be one of the questions that people ask. They, because unless you've been there, you're really not sure, exactly. So are these some of the things that people ask you about, and what are your thoughts about that?
It's interesting because people ask about, in the following where you are, loved ones on the other side. They'll ask about that, but oftentimes they just come through.
So the loved
And the loved one will come through with a message or letting them know that they're okay, and giving them advice or guidance. It just really depends. My experience, mostly they show up and they come through and they speak, and then they're gone again.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come through, you can feel their energy. And a lot of times people will sense and feel that energy of their loved one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do you confirm or do you even need to confirm that this is actually the person's loved one? And this is a reality of the sort that even though it's happening on a non-physical level, on a sort of metaphysical level, that is actually real and not imagined. Do you have a way that like if somebody was asked, like say a skeptic was to ask you that question, how would you answer it?
When they come through, and especially when they voluntarily come through, oftentimes they'll show themselves as they were when they were on this side. So you get description, or they will give information that of how they were, and how they functioned on this when they were on this side. And most often, when the message is given and what is said triggers in the person that's receiving that message, and they just know that it's their loved one and it's their grandmother or whoever it was that came through.
Yeah, because you don't know the person yourself, and
No.
you don't ask them, but tell me about the person. If this information of these vibrational, impulses or, vibrational information, I guess I would just say, are just coming to you on an automatic level. It's not something that do you have to do anything to prepare or to allow yourself to have a experience like that?
No, not really. I would say that the preparation is in the fact that I'm sitting with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also been that someone will come through with the information. And then I just impart it. And I hate to say it like that, it just happens, but the connection is made, they're there, the information is given. There are times that I've had someone come through and don't know who they are. And they'll be given a person that can to tell me this is who this person is, and this is the connection.
Well, I'm gonna say a little bit about the reading that you gave me. I probably remember more about it than you do if you remember anything. And so when I went to Joe to have this reading in Sedona, Arizona, I wasn't, that wasn't my intention to go to Arizona and have a reading. I think I might have had some types of readings in the past, but I wasn't very impressed by them. But some of the things that you told me, you mentioned that you had a knowledge that I was involved with yoga, holistic health, teaching, training. You mentioned that, some of the things you told me about was like very deep to me, because you told me about my past lives, right? And so you told me that, I'm not going to go into all the details, but I will say that you told me that in all my past lives, I was always a Black male. And I was kind of really happy to hear that, and you told me that in my past lives that I had always been in a certain type of position either as a king, a chief, a general, in all my past lives, I always had to engage in some type of a military action that involved the taking of other people's lives, And I find that very interesting because I have not killed anybody in this lifetime, and I don't intend to hurt anybody either. But I've always been interested in like military things and martial arts and weapons and things like that. So anyway, so I found that very interesting. You also appear to have a knowledge of my spirit guides, and you even gave me names that they had, right? And you told me you described their personalities, right? Because you said one was very disciplined and stern and very, like focused. And the other one was more laid back, easygoing, humorous and things like that. And I thought that sort of I said, that sort of fits my personality, because I can be hardcore on one level, but I'm very, balanced on other level. And so I found that very interesting. I found the things that you were telling me to be very credible, because you told me other things that you really didn't have any way of knowing. So I thought that was very interesting. In all the readings I've had, I've never had anybody, tell me the type of things that you told me, and I was even able to look up certain things, like to find out certain things about certain groups of people in the past in certain areas of Africa that you said wasn't even on the map anymore, but that used to exist on maps, that I was able to find these places through doing research and find other places in the world where you said that I had an existence in past lives. And so that's one of the big things that people, past lives is one of the big things that people are interested in, today. So do you have a lot of people coming to you wanting to know about what their past lives are, what their past lives were, and what significance that has for them now?
Presently, not a lot of people that are coming specifically for past life reading. In the past, yes. But in the context of what we're doing at the time a session is taking place and what's coming through, their past life will come through just as it did with the reading with you. It wasn't a past life reading. It's what is most important for the person to know, and the information that they need at that time will come through. So if it's to connect to a life they've lived before, and often every time that happens, it's connected to an interest that they have now, something that a lot of times, something that they've been having come to themselves, like an interest, say, in the ancient Roman Empire. They will have information coming through for themselves, and then connecting with that past life and having that information come through in the reading gives them the confirmation and the impetus to look into it more closely, more deeply.
Yeah. Well, that definitely was my experience. And, it was very, deep. And I'm just kind of having a recall of another, I think that I maybe want to mention a little bit about another reading I had when I was in Cuba, right? And so, as a lot of people know, the African culture and African spiritual traditions. First of all, African spiritual traditions and spiritual science, center on the things that we're talking about, right? Understanding who you are on a spiritual level. For example, before a child is born, a reading is done, and the reading is saying that this, you know, this child is coming, that this child is the reincarnation, so to speak, of somebody who was here before. And that the purpose of this person coming into this incarnation is for this reason, right? So African spiritual traditions are very specific because you're being armed with information from the reading that is giving you insight into how this person should be raised, what their role is going to be in the society, and so on and so forth, right? And so when I went to Cuba and I had this reading, you know, they do what they call IFA. So they have a particular type of a board, a round board circle, and they put coin. They don't throw coins. They throw cowrie shells, and then they're able to read the cowrie shells, but not just reading the cowrie shells based upon the position that the cowrie shells fall in, but because it is dealing with this vibration. The vibration, the cowrie shells are not like, okay, this cowrie shell is up, this cowrie shell is down, so that tells you X, Y, and Z. But it's the energy that you're reading, right, from the cowrie shells. It's the information that you're receiving because the cowrie shells is just opening the door or allowing you to access some information. So you're not just, it's like, to me, it's like numerology. Like you say, okay, I do a numerology reading, and I say, okay, you're number 7. Number 7 means X, Y, and Z because it's all written in the book. But then when you do the numerology reading, you find that this person is 7, and you start saying, yeah, and your mother that passed away wants you to know this. That's not coming from the numbers. That's coming from the fact that the numbers is sort of open up a portal for you to be able to perceive or to receive information, you know, that's beyond that. So I'm saying all that in the context of understanding, our traditions as African people, and that. So when I was in Cuba, and I was having this reading with this Baba Lao. So Baba Lao is a term that they use for the priest. In the Yoruba, in the Ifa tradition, you know, and I know I might not be getting all the terminology right. You know, my daughter is actually my daughter, Kia. So, you know, she's actually a priestess, and her husband is a priest who is from Nigeria in the African tradition, you know. Anyway, a lot of information was given to me in that reading. So I would rank that reading I had in Cuba and the reading that you gave me as being the 2 best ones, but probably the one that you did being really deep. But the one in Cuba was deep too, because they had to, I went through a deep experience. I ain't gonna say it all for everybody to hear, you know, but it was really interesting. I'll tell you later. Yeah. So what do you think about all of that? What's coming to your mind about these issues?
About what you just shared?
Yeah, or whatever.
It touches me in a way that wishes that I could inspire people to, regardless to their walk or their school of thought that they follow, to see the breadth, width, and depth of this universe we live in, that we're a part of, and to sense and be able to sense and know the connection that we have with each other. We're in a lot of ways bombarded with so many distractions, separation, better than, this is that, and this is higher, this is lower, what you do is more, this more or less. It's just all of these things and a whole dualistic way of looking at the world that keeps things so off balance. And I'm seeing that a lot of that is starting to quiet down. And that more and more people are waking up to the fact that there's more than what we just see, feel, touch, smell, taste from the physical material perspective. And it's something that is happening across the board, regardless to a person's school of thought or what religion they follow, what spiritual practice they follow. It's happening not beyond it saying that there's less, that's not whole. It's seeing the wholeness in all of that.
So you're saying like there is an awakening of humanity in general that is going on and is not limited by race, religion, ethnicity, any of those other things that are sort of externalized realities, that we sort of impose upon ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, so with your own journey, right? So I know I don't know, you can just take this and say how much you want to say, but I know that you have a lot of things in your background. I know you come from you come from a business background too, in terms of your former career. You say you have an MBA?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of people that come to me that want a lot of guidance on their business, structuring it, development.
So people come to you like say they want some information or some guidance, some advice about business. How does your spiritual, I don't want to just say psychic, but how does your psychic abilities help to inform that type of work?
It just works. It works in concert with my experience in business and education. And that's the thing that is so beautiful about the process and what's happening now. It's not one foot in the spiritual world and the unseen floating here, and then my everyday daily life with my career, my family, what I do. It's coming to a place where all that comes together, because in my school of thought, we came to this earth whole, prepared, ready. Through life, we end up with all of these influences and conditioning and programming that walks us away from that wholeness that we came in with. Wholeness, an idea of our direction, and not saying that it gets completely lost, because a lot of people aren't actually touching and feeling what they were inclined to do when they came onto this earth. So I got off on
Yeah. So if you're doing business, I think it's important to know what your purpose is, who you are, why you're, is what you're doing. Is that what you're supposed to be doing? Because one of the things that my experience with you confirmed for me was that I'm on a path that I'm ordained to be on. I'm supposed to be on, and it just gave me more surety that I need to stay on that path. And even when I have adversity, I'm not going to change. I might make adjustments and adaptations, but I'm going to still stay on that path, on that course, because people often try to throw you off your course. People criticize you. People tell you, you don't know what you're talking about. People, and so you have a lot of distractions. You have a lot of things that people try to, put in your path. And then you also have disappointments, right? In your, if you're trying to pursue a business, you have disappointments. You have what you might perceive to be a failure because something didn't go right. Like many businesses fail, many businesses go under. There are periods of time when you make money. There's many periods of time when you don't make money. And so that because it's business. So people career in which business is part of is a very important aspect of that. If you look at the zodiac, you got 12 houses, right? One of those houses deal with economics and business and stuff like that. That's an essential part of your makeup that you need to be able to support yourself. You need to be able to pursue your career path that you came here for, and so talking to young people, for example, and a young person, they're not fully formed and fully knowing what they're supposed to be doing. You can give them insight into where they need to be going.
Yes, and they are the most exciting readings when young people come and to see the light turn on when the information is given to contribute to that foundation that they're building, to walk upon and build upon. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that information comes through so easily, and maybe because a lot of the younger people haven't experienced life on this earth this time around to the point where there's a lot of conditioning and a lot of programming in the way. Mm-hmm. And they're newer to the life experience.
Yeah, so the work that you do and the advice that you can channel, I would say channel, and give to this young person.
It's interesting that it doesn't come as advice. And I'm thinking back, it's never, I don't allow it to go in that direction. I don't get the information in a way that tells someone what to do. Mm-hmm. What comes through is that which is in their highest. However, it's always choice. So the information comes through in a way that this is the direction this will lead. The information comes through connecting to really where they are within themselves with it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They just haven't gotten quiet enough to go deep enough to be able to read that within themselves. And so often, and I say that's when it's really spot on, is when it ends up being a level of confirmation or information that assists them with going deeper and building upon even something that was just a spark. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much advising, it's working with them in a way to have the tangible part of it come from within themselves. Mm-hmm. Guiding and reading and guiding and giving the information, the intangible information that helps them to make the connection between mind and spirit.
So I got a lot of different things are popping up in my head. So first of all, what type of skills does a young person need in order to really help them stay focused on pursuing the path that they were meant to pursue when they came here? Because we're saying that I guess you would agree with the fact that everybody comes here with a purpose that they're supposed to do, right? They're supposed to fulfill.
It's really interesting because that when it comes like that, it makes it kind of heavy. And heaviness makes a person kind of tighten.
Okay.
And I've noticed in a lot of ways that they get caught up in the whole thought, but I'm supposed to have a purpose, and my purpose is and then they're often running in different directions. It's connecting with them in a way that to be able to read that energy that gives the who, what, where, when, why, and how of a person. And oftentimes once that's given, it's not like they are totally surprised and like, oh my goodness, I've never heard this or never thought this before. It's always something, but it's their energy, it's their vibration, it's their story. I'm just picking it up and giving it to them where they can hear it outside of all the noise. So in that, what they need in particular will eventually come through as we're exploring and I'm reading the energy and giving them that information of what they have within themselves. And the beauty of it is a lot of times, and most often, having that information inspires them. It sets off a spark. It inspires them, and they know what they need to, what would be in their best interest to pursue. A lot of times they're already on the track, they just didn't trust it and have the confidence and have the information to be able to say, yes, keep moving forward, keep moving forward. There's nothing more beautiful than when the person gets it for themselves, gets themselves, and it all comes together. They literally, you can see light.
Okay. Yeah. So now it's sort of, that sort of brings me back to Kemetic yoga, because you are a Kemetic yoga practitioner and a certified teacher. I don't know if you've been teaching, but what made you become attracted to Kemetic yoga?
An experience that I had with you when we met in Washington, D.C., and Yasir walked me through a series of postures, and literally the posture that was done, I felt like an electrical current come up, and I would say from the earth. It came up through the sole of my feet chakras, the soles of my feet, went up through my body and into my left hand, and I felt a chakra like an electrical current and sense a spark. I was blown away at how powerful and how connecting and how I would think, okay, with the Kemetic yoga, And just doing it and experiencing and reading the information and listening to Yasser when he's speaking, it's so holistic. It's so holistic. And it assists me, and I'm sure with others, when you're working through issues, it just brings mind, body, and spirit together. It really does. And that's when I had that experience and felt the power of that, and then once Yasir came to Sedona and we went on a hike and sat on the side of the mountain.
That was the second time I met you in Sedona.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it just really moves me. Kemetic yoga moves me, and I was doing yoga every day, different forms of yoga, but I never got that level of wholeness from practicing other forms of yoga. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. It's just that the Kemetic yoga spoke to me in that way, where it was just so holistic.
Well, I'm going to say this about Kemetic yoga and about the YogaSkills method, right? So my view of yoga is that it is preparing you. I'm talking about yoga in general. I'm talking about the intention of yoga was to give you a glimpse into the afterlife and to give you a small experience of what it's like to be in the afterlife. Okay? And because yoga, to me, that was the original intention of yoga. Yoga today has been turned into, this is for stretching. This is for, I'm gonna get my core muscles stronger. This is for stretching. This is a physical exercise. Or it's only for maybe relaxation, right? Which is all good because, you want to have a strong core. You want to have, firm muscles in your arms, in your back, your legs, all that kind of stuff. You want to be strong. You want to be healthy. You want to be able to manage stress. But ultimately, you want to have that transcendent experience that allows you to be able to get a glimpse into what it's like to exist without the physical body, which is where we're all headed to. These are the ones that still walking around in a physical, what you call it, a meat suit or something like that, in this physical body. And so all the techniques that we do in Kemetic yoga is about moving energy, stimulating the production of various types of neurotransmitters or chemicals in the brain that allow us to access some of that unseen world. It's almost like in the movie The Matrix, right? When they get the two pills, and one pill, and I know it was a red and a blue, but I know one pill allows you to just go back into the Matrix and live in this fake way, and then the other pill allows you to really experience reality, And so, in a sense, we are living in a false reality, in a false world, when all we know is the physical. And so yoga, we go into the Sahu pose, we go into our deep meditation. When you go through our different movements and postures, we are stimulating the mind, we are stimulating different biochemicals in the body that allow us to open up certain doors within our consciousness that connects back to the non-physical world. even in ancient Kemet, you went to Kemet with us about 2 years ago, right? And when we went to certain tombs and certain tombs, yeah, maybe temples too. They had something that I forget the Kemetic word for it. It's like, but it's called it a false door or a spirit door. And it was like it's a type of a door that's like a portal, right, to the non-physical world. And it allows you to have that afterlife. It actually, and so it allows the spirit of the deceased person to go back and forth, from the spirit world back into this corporal material world, back to the spirit world, right? And so when we're practicing yoga, we are placing ourselves into a state where we are actually experiencing the non-physical world. We're experiencing that spirit world. When we go into Sahupo, that's what is commonly called Savasana. That's what's commonly called the corpse pose. Then we are going into a state where we are experiencing what it feels like to be outside of the physical body, to be without the weight and the confinement of the physical body. And then we are able to experience ourselves in the non-physical reality. We're able to move differently. We're able to move without encumbrance. This is an encumbrance. You can only move so fast. You can only go so far. But when you leave out of this, you are able to do things and experience things on a totally different level. So for me, that's what the purpose of yoga is. That's how Kemetic yoga is formulated, because I believe that's how all African culture and all African spiritual science was formulated, is in one way or the other to give you access to this non-physical reality, and then to allow you to be able to experience the non-physical reality while you're still existing in the physical realm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's beautifully said, because that's what when I said it just feels holistic, it's where all that integrates, and then you go beyond that. And it reminds me of my death experience where all that integrated, and that's what I experience when I'm doing Kemetic yoga. What you're expressing, it's literally going beyond the body, and not saying leaving the body out of the equation. It's body, mind, spirit, even feeling. It's like it all becomes one. And that's what the sensing of that electrical current that I felt go through me was like. It was like everything had come together.
Okay. Well, I think that, I know we've been on here for a little while, and so I don't like to put time limitations. They say time doesn't exist, but clocks do, something like that. So I'm very non-linear in terms of my perception of time. So, but I think, that's we probably covered a lot of stuff. There's a lot more stuff to cover, like, because you mentioned your near-death experience. Did you say that?
Death experience.
Yeah, and I've had maybe one or two of those myself. So maybe that's something we can talk about at another time to get deeper into those types of issues. Because people do have experiences where they come close to, where they have either come close to leaving the physical body, or they have actually left the physical body and then they come back into it, right? And so, and again, it's very analogous to yoga because when you're doing this, what we call the Sahu pose, that's deep relaxation. We are actually experiencing, that thing that's called death, but not in a sense of death in the way people perceive death, but in the sense of I'm able to experience myself detached from the confinement of the physical environment. And if you look at the Kemetic philosophy about that and the whole way that African spirituality is structured, it was all structured and it's all based upon the fact that we're being prepared for this eventuality, because it's like when you come into this world, when you come into the material world as a child, as a baby, you got to learn how to walk, talk, go to the bathroom, have social skills and all those type of things. But when you make your transition into the afterlife from this life, you have to learn all the rules, a whole another set of rules, right? How do you exist in the non-physical reality? How do you move? How do you think? How do you interact? How do you communicate? All those things have to be done even when you're in the non-physical realm. So how do you do those things? So when you go into your deep meditation, when you're into your Sahu pose or your other type of meditations that you may do, then you are getting, it's like you're getting a foothold into the afterlife before you get to the afterlife. It's like if you're a college student, you go to Upward Bound, and when you're a sophomore, junior, you are able to go to a college campus and see, oh, this is how it is in college, and you're able to talk to college students, and you can get their insight into how they made their transition, right? So it's the same, to me, it's the same thing about when I know that eventually I'm going to make my transition. So how do I prepare myself for that eventuality? Do I wait until 2 seconds before I make my transition from the physical to the non-physical? Or do I prepare myself for years in advance so that I have a very good idea how it feels, what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to be act, what the nature and characteristics and the qualities of this existence, in the non-physical reality is. So I prepare myself. So that's why I practice. That's one of the reasons why I practice yoga. But that is the reason why I practice yoga in the manner that I do, and not just simply as a physical exercise and stretching and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents. Okay, so how can people get in touch with you? What's your phone number? I don't know what you want to give out. I don't know if you got a website, or email address, or what you want to give people.
The website is jlpearson, PEARSON.com.
Okay, so I will put that in, the notes of whatever when this is going to be published on YouTube, and so I'm going to put your website and information there,
and I have email if they prefer the email.
Well, you can put your email too, or you can tell us your email.
It's joepearson225@gmail.com.
So that's Pearson. Our name is Joe, JoePearson. What you say? 1, 2, 3.
225.
225. Joe Pearson 225 at
gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Okay. Well, this is Kemetic YogaSkills, and it's been a really wonderful experience as usual. talking to you, Joe. And so we're gonna go out now. I'm gonna show you some more of the sights of Chicago and let you experience more of this wonderful city that we live in. And then we're off. So thank you very much for coming to visit. The Chicago. That's a Native American kind of way of saying it. Chicago. Which is a type of a plant. It's like an onion. It's like what you call those leeks, like a long onion, green onions, and the smell of it filled up the environment of Chicago, of this area. So they call it Chicago.
That's interesting.
And it's interesting that the word Chicago is like chi, C-H-I, chi, and then ka. So chi means life force, energy. Chi ka means spirit. It's Kemetic word for spirit. And then you got go at the end, Chicago. So it's very interesting.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
And then the city itself was founded by a black man named Jean Point du Sable, who was a black man from Haiti, who originated from Haiti. Okay? And then they just renamed Lakeshore Drive after him. And they renamed our Congress Expressway after I.D.B. Wells, And I.D.B. Wells was a freedom fighter, a sister who was a freedom fighter, and did a lot of, service to us who are her descendants. She's an ancestor who did a great service for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we're going to say Onk Uja Sineo Hotel.
That's